Welcome back to my channel. In this video, I will show you how to save an orchid with rotten or even completely absent roots and what to pay attention to in order to prevent root rot. I will explain these things. Here, I am preparing a simple mixture to revive the orchid. I will use this mixture shortly on the orchids for root care. First, we finely chop 3 or 4 cloves of garlic. Then we place these garlic cloves into a jar filled with water. Now, after crushing up 1 aspirin and adding it to the same jar, we need to let this mixture sit for 2 days. You can use this mixture not only on orchids, but also on your other houseplants. Using this mixture once a week will be sufficient. You will notice quite a difference in your plants. Here we have an orchid with dried roots and wilted leaves. How can we revive this orchid? Now, let's watch it. Orchids are plants resistant to diseases. However, if you do not provide the right conditions for your orchid, you will make it sick. For example, root rot. As you can see here, reviving and rerouting an orchid with rotted roots and lost roots is quite simple with the right practices. Here, I will show you a technique that I personally apply. I cut and discard all of these roots you see here. When I say I cut and discard all of them, pay attention. I leave the ones on the top that are gray, and I leave the center, which we call the place where the roots emerge. Look, I continue cutting this area, you see, until I see green, because the dry part is of no use to me. I will continue to trim little by little until it is green. Actually, it's not the roots, but this thick part you see in the middle. This is the stem that actually nourishes the orchid. We continue to gently scrape the edges little by little until we see green without cutting it completely. By the way, I would like to add this. One of the biggest causes of root rot is incorrect watering during winter. So, how should it be done? If your orchid is in a stuffy environment without any breeze from November to the end of April, you should water it once a month, or even once every 1.5 months. If you water too much, the roots are doomed to rot. Continue like this throughout the winter, that is, until the end of April. I could have sped up the footage here, but I especially want you to see it. I am trying to leave as much green and large pieces as possible, very delicately, so that I reveal the living stem that actually nourishes the orchid. In the meantime, I want to share another piece of information. After wiping the leaves of your orchid with a damp cloth, take it to a place where it can get a light breeze in the evenings. You'll see your orchid will be more vigorous. We remove the dried roots and the useful main stem is in the center. Now, we continue with our other procedures. I always say, remove and discard the sponge in the middle of the orchid that comes to your home. Here, we will do the exact opposite. Now, should we add that sponge? Any sponge the size of a matchbox will do. You can even use a dish sponge for this. We make a hole in the middle so that we can pass the root around it. Look, make 2 holes like this. Just be careful. The roots above, do not break them and do not damage the leaves either. Gently. We pass the sponge in 2 layers over this main stem. The purpose of placing this sponge here is to ensure that the area where the orchid feeds remains moist. No matter how much you water the soil, since the roots are not functioning, they will not be able to transfer nutrients to your orchid. Thanks to this sponge, when we water, the orchid will take as much water as it needs from what the sponge has absorbed. Now we first strain the garlic and aspirin water that we prepared and let sit for 2 days, separating the liquid. We are now starting our process with this water. We place your orchid into this water so that the sponge thoroughly absorbs the water. The orchid soil we will use should not be too fragmented because the roots need to breathe, and especially check inside to ensure there are no mealybugs. The process we will do here is only when we water. We perform a process to prevent the water inside the sponge from evaporating quickly and to keep the orchid stable. In other words, we will compress the roots. We are not making holes in the pot to let air in or anything like that here. The goal is for the orchid to recover within a certain period. And now, the orchid soil, again with this garlic water. We completely soak it. We perform this process every 2 days. Look, perform this process every 2 days for about a month. But let all the water drain from the bottom. Never let water remain in the pot. Now let's move on to our second orchid. Similarly, look, its roots are also in a decayed state. We will do the same process for this one. Meanwhile, as you watch this process, why does root rot occur? What are the mistakes we make? Let me talk about that. Do not water the orchid that comes to your home for the first week, even if the soil, meaning the pine bark, is dry. Remove the pine bark on the top of the pot one by one until the roots are visible. Let the roots get air. They need to be able to breathe comfortably. The roots, the ones under the bark you removed, might be slightly moist, those barks. So, we scrape the top part of the orchid soil. A little bit is left at the bottom. They are moist. In that case, we do not water again until those roots dry out, and when the color of the roots changes from green to a slightly greenish gray, water by draining the water over them. If you notice, the roots of the orchid I submerged in water are also gray. So it needs water. It will be watered when it is this color, and let the water you drained completely pour out from the bottom. No water should remain in the saucer. In summer, do this watering according to the color of the roots. Do it when it changes from green to greenish gray. If the green color on the roots persists for a long time, then just wipe the leaves with a damp cloth. We have now prepared our orchids and will wait for them to recover over time. Look, there are no leaves in the middle. Now I am specifically cutting the very wilted leaves, because the very wilted leaves are unnecessary, as they will give all the minerals and vitamins they take from the roots to the leaves, and for root formation. I cut them and sprinkled cinnamon powder there, so that it uses its energy to recover these leaves. And this is the condition of our orchid 1 month later. So, the leaf that was drooping before now looks a bit more upright. And if you notice, there is a new leaf formation in the middle. And it looks more vibrant and upright. Leaves. In a moment, I will make small holes in this pot so that the roots and soil of the orchid can breathe. I recommend you do this as well. This is my other orchid. My cockatiel ate its leaf, but still there is no problem. If you notice, it also has another leaf growing in the middle. The other leaves couldn't recover. I might even cut them off. But there is root formation. As you can see, there is a root in the middle as well. Another factor in root rot is not changing the orchid soil for a long time. The crumbling pine bark in the pot prevents the roots from breathing. The roots should not be cramped, and air should pass through them. In fact, I will mix a little pumice stone into the orchid soil here. If air does not pass through the soil, salinization occurs and it can cause your orchid to die. Since new root formation will occur from above, it is beneficial to plant your orchid a bit deeper. So what is the other factor in root rot? Do not keep an orchid with wet roots, in a place without air and breeze. While ensuring there is a breeze, be careful not to leave it in a draft. Whether the environment is cool or not, it doesn't matter if it's hot, roots that don't get air will rot. If you don't have a place that gets air, you can make small holes on the sides of the pot for ventilation. If you like this video, please don't forget to click like and subscribe to my channel and activate the bell to watch my next videos.